Hello, for those of you that are new here, either to my channel or Matt's. Before we get started, just give you a quick idea of what this live stream series is supposed to be. This is the first one, but if it goes well, if you're interested, I'd love to do more. And basically, I want to give our audiences a chance to do a little bit of like the behind the scenes with Booktube. So essentially, getting to talk about what goes on that we don't otherwise get to see if we're not. Basically, if you don't have like Booktube friends, a lot of times, a lot of these conversations happen behind the scenes of creators trying to figure out, well, what works, what doesn't, and how to like, I would joke, but like how to like appease the like Booktube gods and like, and make things work. So that's the idea behind it. Hopefully, this will be interesting to creators as well as regular subscribers. I personally like to pull the curtain back and be like, okay, what are people doing? Because I can kind of, sometimes you can guess a little bit by watching other creators and be like, oh, I bet they're doing that because of that. But it's so much more fun to talk about it. So anyway, for anyone who doesn't know, this is Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews. And do you kind of want to introduce yourself? Like, what are kind of the bread and butter of your channel for someone who is perhaps subscribed to my channel and not to yours? And by the way, afterwards, I will absolutely get the link to your channel in that description box so everyone can go check you out.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rachel. So as the channel's named, I do mostly fantasy book reviews. I do some sci-fi and some historical fiction, but fantasy is my bread and butter. My channel really is designed about reviews themselves. So I do other videos, but essentially my kind of the hook to my channel is as soon as I finish a book, I kind of record myself the last few minutes I'm reading it, and then I close the book and I talk about it without any editing or prep. I just talk. And so I do that for every book I read. I read like 100, 125 books a year. So I got, a review out every few days. And then in between then I'll do kind of whenever I get the inspiration, I'll do other videos, but really it's a review channel. So, but with a unscripted kind of feel to it.
Yeah, okay. I promise you I wouldn't get into anything controversial, but I always when I watch reviews and you're like, and I'm done the book. And I was like, there's no way you just finished the book. So you actually do plan it out. So you sit down kind of, I have whatever amount of time before your recording
Yep.
time
So
set
I
aside to
essentially
purposely
what I do
finish
is
them.
like if I'm getting close to the end of the book, I'll stop reading.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then after my kids go to bed, I'll go finish up the book. So I record like 5 or 10 minutes of like just me reading,
Okay.
and
And you
so
actually record that, like you'll hit the record button before
hit
you.
the record button before, and then I'll just edit out everything except for the last second or
Right.
two. So yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious because I wasn't even going to call you out on it, but I was like, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, there's no way that he's like clearly doing that as like a fake, a
No, yeah,
fake countdown. Yeah.
I started doing it because
Yeah.
I hadn't felt like anybody did that, and then it just kind of became my thing. And so a couple times lately, I've been on vacation and I couldn't do it. I actually did finish the book, but I'll fess up to it at the beginning and be like, I finished it a few days ago, but here we go.
Oh, I love that. Well, even the fact that you try to do that most of the time, I think is really great. And that's something actually, I have a whole script of questions I want to ask you, but we'll kind of go as this comes along. That I was discussing with a lot of booktubers that you mentioned you talk off the cuff, and I personally love that. Now, anyone who's seen my channel knows that I mess up book titles, book authors. I say words that aren't real English words all the time, but I obviously do edit my videos, but I do prefer that off the cuff thing, which hopefully works well with something like this as opposed to like that. Have you ever, I guess, done like teleprompter things like that?
I have a teleprompter, but I do it when I'm doing like a list.
That makes sense.
So if I'm going over like my top 10 favorite books of
Yeah.
whatever, I do that because before it was like my eyes drifting off camera to like a
Yeah.
paper off screen. And then I do a teleprompter. I put it up for the books just so I don't mess up the title. So I'll put like the title of the book, and then I'll put a couple general
Yeah.
things that are the same for everything. So I'll
Yeah.
say, if I lose something to talk about, I'll write like story, world building,
Yeah.
characters, and so I'll just kind of be like, oh, time to talk about this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've done that too, exactly. Like I would be impressed if someone like perfect, has like mentally, 10 books and because even I'm like, oh, did I rank this at 7 or 6 if I'm doing something? So for me, I just have like my notes on my phone, and if you watch my clips, you can obviously tell like between sections, it always like fades to black or kind of has a little transition, and it's just because it's like, a minute of me going like, oh, what was that book title again, and those kind of things. But it's actually, and everyone has different preferences. So if anyone has comments in the description box, if, would want to chat in the comments. But I do, as a viewer, lean towards it unscripted because for me, often what I like to do is like reactions. That if I just want to get like, here is the most precise synopsis of a story, there's Wikipedia, there's backs of books, things like that. And, I think exactly like kind of knowing, okay, I want to talk about the world building, but then off the cuff, it sounds like, that's you're not specifically having like a paragraph of saying like, all right, this world is that, this and that. By the
Yeah.
way, Yeah.
And to be
No.
honest with you, I don't
Mhm.
watch a ton of BookTube because I'm busy. But when I do, it's to get the unscripted stuff. If I want scripted, I'll just go read a review
Yeah.
because that's essentially what it is for a lot of channels, which is great for them. It's just not what I'm personally into.
No, that makes sense, for sure. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about, so I guess outside of obviously making videos, which YouTube itself will get to more, we'll
Mhm.
ideally, put you in like the recommended page for people. But I believe you've done some external sources where you try to, I wouldn't say farm, views on your channel. But, and again, I should preface this whole video series and specifically our topic that I think a lot of times creators are afraid to talk about the behind the scenes, because what we're supposed to always say is we just love books. We don't care if anyone watches our videos. We're just happy to be making content. And I really think it should be goes without saying that if you make booktube content, you're not doing it to get rich and get famous. You
Yeah.
obviously, and I think it comes across very authentically in your channel that you love books, you love reading, you love sharing those stories with other people. So I do appreciate that you're willing to kind of talk about the fact that it would be nice if people saw your videos or had, get, those conversations. I'm sure in those videos, I can only imagine are probably gold of having someone comment back and saying, "Oh, what do you think of this ending?" or da 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 and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, what have you done for kind of other sources to kind of reach out to new subscribers?
So I think the biggest one I did, and the reason I think my channel started off well was that I had a big presence on Goodreads before I came to BookTube.
Hmm.
And so I artificially kind of did it. I totally felt like I could trick the system into increasing my profile. And I just, for a couple months straight, I just added friends. I would go to other reviewers that were reviewing the same kind of books I liked. I would go look at what I would go look, and if they reviewed a book who liked their stuff, I would go at all those people because I know those people were engaged with, feedback. And so I was just kind of farming friends that I knew were going to like my stuff.
So you were
And
using us. That's what you're telling me.
totally, totally.
Just kidding.
And then
Yeah.
once I hit the cap of 5,000 friends, then I started really making reviews on my own. And at that point, I had so many friends that I instantly became one of like the top reviewers in America. Um,
That's impressive.
Not because the quality of my reviews, but because of the adding the right people.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then so when I launched a booktube channel, I instantly got, hundreds of people converted over.
Right.
And still I think I get a lot of people converted over when I do reviews on Goodreads because people see that I link. I say, hey, here's my booktube channel. Here's me actually reviewing the book in person. Come watch that. And so I totally use Goodreads you know in a farming kind of sense. But the other one is Discord. So I have this kind of belief that Discord can kind of feed into your YouTube channel, and your YouTube channel can feed into Discord. And so I'm constantly looking for reasons to get people onto the Discord,
Hmm.
and then they're more likely to watch my stuff and help the algorithm because those are more loyal people that are going to want to watch things because they have a connection to me. And so definitely the biggest two, and those massively help my channel.
That makes a lot of sense. I did watch a video where you've kind of shared some of this on your channel before. And when you talked about the Goodreads, I actually did the thing where I looked up on Goodreads and I was like, we were friends. And I fully admit I am not someone, it's been, because I've been on BookTube a long time, but that's a whole different story. But, but I'm not someone who actively like goes and seeks out Goodreads friends anymore. I am that person who kind of just, again, as a creator, I just kind of let them come to me. So if I get requests, I always click yes, 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 yes to all of
Yeah.
those. So I was like, oh, at some point you farmed me. So I was like, oh, I felt so flattered that you had, yeah, just because I know. And I say this, there's tons of booktubers I watch who I actively watch every day, but I'm not good for as much as I always say to like, on my videos, I'll say, oh, friend me on Facebook or, or not Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but on Goodreads, but then I don't actually I'm bad for, I always joke that I'm a bad subscriber. I'm a better content creator than that, hopefully. But that's interesting to see. And I think, yeah, well, I guess let's talk a little bit more. So I think, yeah, you really had a good, I guess, like entry plan into booktube, which I think is why I love to do something like this, because I fully admit, I guess I'll give the short version for anyone's not aware. I'm really old on booktube. People either know that or they just discover my channel and think I'm new because they don't realize I've been on here forever. But what I did is what you shouldn't do, or well, if you do it, great, but it doesn't grow your channel very well. Where I just kind of I edited in Windows Movie Maker. I had, the lowest quality camera. This, of course, is a laptop, so like, live streams aren't going to be as high res for my picture, but I kind of did everything. I didn't really have a focus to my videos or titles or thumbnails were all in paint. Like it was a thing. And so I took a really long time before I found my audience. I don't really want to take this video. I can do that kind of, sprinkle in as we do these sessions. I most want to talk about you, but to have an actual focus and say, okay, let's see what you can do and actually have a kind of a plan going in. I wish I wasted a lot of years not knowing what I was doing and kind of not doing myself any favors that made it a lot harder to get seen. Which again, it's like it's just you want people to talk to you, want to have have ideally friends online.
Well, and ultimately it'll hurt your channel because the algorithm, right? Like
Yeah.
you only want people that watch your videos that are going to be interested in your content.
Yes.
And so, I don't want people watching my videos and like and subscribing to my channel if I don't think they're going to continue to watch the stuff because that's going to hurt me.
Yeah.
Um, so
Exactly. Well, I don't even know if my husband, he sometimes watches my live streams, but he's always like, "I subscribe to your channel." I was like, "But you don't watch my videos. You're actually kind of hurting me, I think,
yeah.
in the long run." But he's so proud. He's like, he'll like look at me in the recommended thing, and he's like, "There you are." It's like, "Did you click on it?" No, no.
See, my wife does the opposite, and I've explained this whole thing to her.
Uh-huh.
And so
Yeah.
when I make a video, she'll often like play it and then put the phone down and like
That's
let
hilarious.
it
So
finish.
she's giving you the view time without
Yep.
actually experiencing. That's hilarious. Oh, I love that. For sure. And I guess so, yeah. So once you got onto YouTube, you found that, you're getting some draws from Goodreads. And I'll admit, I used to do that where I would link videos on Goodreads and I stopped doing that. I saw your video and I actually started doing that again. And I think it's like 5% of my try. It's tiny,
Yeah.
but I do get that little bit because I'll admit I do that too, where I'm scrolling on Goodreads and I'm like, oh, like Matt's read this book. Oh, well, look, here's a link, and I will go and
Yep.
check out the longer form video. So I was like, that's a really good one. I used to do that. I kind of actually forgot. You kind of pick up strategies and then forget them along the way when life gets busy, I guess.
Well, it's such a good little trick too, because when you first make a booktube channel, it can be very demotivating
Yeah.
when you're plowing along, you're around for a year, you have 100 subscribers, and it's like, what am I doing? And so to have this kind of strategy going into it, so that you instantly kind of get that feedback bump that keeps you motivated, at least for me, was very helpful to keeping me wanting to make content.
For sure. And I guess that leads into what my next question was going to be is do you mind talking about, I guess, some of the videos or things that kind of help to get you into the YouTube algorithm, things that like specific videos or projects you did that helped to kind of bump that up along the way, especially kind of in the early years where, or early, I don't even know how long your channel, I was going to say,
I've
you
been
told me it
around
was quite.
for a little over a year.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Um,
you're a baby channel in my mind. That's why I thought you
yeah,
were perfect as a first guest. That I think you really did a great job of, in a very again like authentic way, building an audience, and especially again based off. We'll get to it more. I want to discuss it more. That everyone's like, you can't do reviews on BookTube anymore. No one watches the reviews, and you're like, well, you made it work. So I love it.
yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean,
what? Mhm.
so the I did reviews for a long time, and I was just getting like a trickle of subscribers.
Yeah,
Like 5 a day.
yeah,
I got 10 one day, and I was like, this is crazy. But then I made a video that was like a compilation video, which I've seen works for you quite well. When
I've
I
done.
look at
Yeah,
your most popular videos, that's what
yeah,
they are,
yeah.
and that's what it is for everybody. And I did like this video where I was like my most controversial opinions
Okay.
and or like the most disappointing books that I've read. And people love that stuff. I don't know
Yeah,
why. And it blew up. I got like
yeah. I think.
30,000 views in a few week period, and that got me over the hump to get monetized. That's how I didn't want to put any money into my channel until I made money, and
Makes
so
sense.
then I bought equipment and I instantly just upgraded everything.
Yeah,
But it's that compilation type videos that get you the subs. But I find that the reviews keep them
okay.
because at least for me, and that I draw them in with the. That's how I get new people in. I try to strategically do it so I have one video in the algorithm at any given time. And once it gets out, then I pump out another one that I know is going to get in. And because you kind of get the sense of what's going to work and what's not going to work over time. But then I consistently kind of pump out the reviews then because I think that's what keeps people at my channel.
Yeah,
And because otherwise, I'm just going to be one of those people, and no offense to them, that are just constantly doing these videos to drive in new people. And they kind of burn out, not only because it's not really fun to do that, but because people kind of get bored of those videos over time. You just keep
yeah,
talking about the same books. Unless you're reading 1,000 books a year, there's only so much you can talk about the top books that I've read. And so
yeah.
I find a blend is extremely helpful.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. And honestly, I know you're not talking specifically about me, but I do like that's kind of where I was feeling right now. And that was the kind of the private conversation I've had with my own kind of booktube group of friends is I've been in a cycle of lists lately where if I kind of have two like streams of videos right now. So either it is my, reviews but in group form, which again does as a general kind of perform better, but
Mhm.
you only have like a minute or two per book, so you can't really do any deep dives. And then it's listicles. It's like, again, I do horror and sci-fi, so it's like, cannibal horror and then, hard science fiction, all of this. And some of them do really well and some of them don't. And I do kind of worry or not. It's the idea that yeah, it's like it's a combination of not wanting to reuse the same books, making sure that you're actually bringing new content. I do think it's a tricky thing. I would never point out anyone publicly, but you do see certain channels where their listicles are kind of like, I've seen those books in your last, videos, and you kind of see that they're not reading quite quick enough to be turning over different content. And I just find with myself that I'm getting a little bit tired of it. So I kind of
Yeah.
suspect that my audience is too. And it's like, okay, what can I do different? And so I'm kind of talking about that too. I have some plans for the fall, and some of it's going to be doing some longer form content. And it's strange to say that I don't know if it's going to perform well on my channel, but I do think it's important for me to do it. I also think there's a level of, again, I keep using the word authenticity. I'm really overusing it in this live stream here, but I think it's a fact that when I talk about books really for a long period of time, just saying like, oh, I read this book, then I read this one, is that when you don't have time to go into a lot of detail, I do sometimes get comments being like, oh, you only had like 2 minutes to say about this book. Like, did you even read it? And just kind of like, I was like, well, I can do a long form, but that would be a 40-minute wrap up, which I don't have time to film, quite honestly. So highlighting books that I do want to really dissect in a little bit more detail and kind of favorites that I want to really go into. I think I like that because I think when you do say a listicle video like yourself, Matt, that I've seen your deep dives into world building and characters and things like that. So when you're saying I really love this book and you're giving kind of a short form nutshell review, I like that. I I kind of I already know I trust you as a reviewer, and so I think it kind of lends itself well, even if your reviews don't necessarily hit those same like highs, I guess. So you try to do a bit of like both, kind of bounce back and forth in your content.
Yeah, and there's a blend you can kind of do between them too. I mean, like I did this series of videos where I went over my top 100 favorite books. And so I did it in 10 batches of 10, and I
Yep.
talked for each book for like 8 to 10 minutes. So the
Right.
videos were
Yeah.
extremely long.
Yeah.
But it let people know that I actually like have feelings about these books. I don't have to just rapid fire go through them and
Mhm.
really get into depth on them with people. And people kind of love that content. It's just hard to produce because you're trying to remember books that you've read years ago,
Yeah.
and to talk about them for a long time. But from the internal perspective, it's great. I mean, it got enormous growth for my channel, and to be honest, it made a ton of money because I'm able to serve like 6, 7 ads in between, and that's just a great bump. You're going to get 10 huge checks out of it, which is nice.
No, that totally makes sense for sure. And I think I know there's always the like people talk about on YouTube about like, negative content doing better than positive. Do you find that the case? I do know even with your video reviews or sorry, like your book reviews that you do a star rating on the screen. So do you find that like the 5 and the 0 star or like 1 stars kind of do better than say the 3 stars, for instance?
I think that the my 1 star reviews get the most views. I just yesterday I was going through it and looking, and my top 5 best reviews were all like 1 stars. But then the next batch is all 5 stars, and so and then my 3 stars or like 2 to 4 get nothing.
Yeah.
People have this. Tell me, Matt, are you going to rant, or are you going
Yeah.
to rant in one way or the other?
Yeah.
And
Rant or
that
gush, pick a lane.
Yep, and
Yeah.
it's hard to be, I try to insulate myself from being influenced by that because it would
Hmm.
be very beneficial for me to just give 1 and 5 stars to everything.
Yeah.
But just I just trying to be true to myself and knowing like, look, I'd love to give this a 5 star review, but I can't. So, but it's hard because you got to just once you know that, it's hard to not be influenced by it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. No, I think that's kind of the tricky part. Like for me, like I will probably never do individual reviews of those middling books. And even I've gotten to the point where if I'm having a week where I've read actually so much. There are times where, unless it's a review copy that specifically was sent by a publisher, sometimes I don't even talk about my middle of the road books. If it's something new and popular that people really want to know about, I will. But if it's like, here's some backlist random thing, and my only comment is that it was good but not great, then sometimes I just feel like, it's always hard to, yeah, have something that I guess like invokes comments. Like mostly what I'll notice is like if I talk about a certain amount of books in a wrap up, the ones that are just okay but not terrible don't get any responses. Like I'll
Yep.
actually check and think, did I cut out that clip? Like I'll have to, I'll flip through the video to see if I made an editing mistake and be like, no, it's there, just no one cares. And it's, yeah, it's kind of interesting. But
Yeah,
I
I
think
I
for,
started doing the
okay,
same
yeah.
thing where if
Mhm.
I just don't have strong feelings about a book that nobody cares about anyways, I'll just talk about it in my wrap up.
I was
But I'm
wondering
not
if you
going to
gave
just
yourself
go
permission.
spend a
Yeah,
bunch of time doing a review that nobody cares about.
yeah.
That it's waste of both our times.
Yeah, and I guess along those lines, how do you deal with sequels? Because that's especially more so in fantasy. I'd say I deal with less sequels when I'm doing sci-fi and horror. Do you still do standalone reviews for those, and do you get into spoilers? Like, what's your rule of thumb?
So I never do any spoilers at any point.
I've
Um,
never seen you, at least. Yeah.
yeah, so I just go pure non spoilers. But I go sequels. I mean, I've done 10-book series. Well, I'll still talk about the 10th book. And at the end of the day, it's like when I care about something, I don't care as much if people are going to watch it if I care.
Hmm.
But I also try to go out and promote those reviews to that audience. If it's a series, they probably have a subreddit, they probably have a Discord, and so going there and being like, "Hey, I'm talking about your favorite thing," and
Yeah.
that brings in the views that I
Yeah.
otherwise wouldn't be able to get through the algorithm itself.
Yeah, and I know, like, definitely exactly kind of passion projects. We could do a whole different live stream. I'm currently reading, you'll be happy, The Wandering Inn,
Oh,
and I'm
awesome!
definitely giving credit to you for that. It'll be in my upcoming fall TBR, and I know that's one exactly that I've kind of seen that you've been reading into the further books. And I think it was actually, I want to say I clicked on, I think it was book 4 or something, and in the video you said like, I'm not going to do spoilers. I need to get more people watching this, watching or jumping on this bandwagon. And it kind of was like, "Okay, I'm gonna spend a couple bucks and try out this book," and yeah, it's really good. It's just very long, so
Yeah, it's very
I keep
long,
I keep putting it aside for review copies, but I'm like,
and the
really
audience is rabid. I mean,
yeah.
my biggest 5-star review is the Wandering In book,
Is it? Yeah,
because that their audience is just enormous and passionate about that book.
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense for sure. Yeah, I guess we talked about, yeah. So those are some of the books, like you say, yeah, your listicles, like I guess like a lot of the top tens. Because I did kind of peeked in your like not analytics, but just from the front view, getting to see what's popular. And do you
Mhm.
notice you have like kind of anything with the word top ten seems to really do well, I think. And I think people like and hate that as content creators, that I can be like, here's 10 thriller books I like, but if I put them in a list and rank them, I do think it like somehow appeals to people more. But
It
I don't mind.
does.
Yeah.
It
Hmm.
helps me because I'm pretty OCD in my real life. Like, I try to not let it impact my life in
Yeah.
negative ways like I did when I was a
Hmm.
kid, but it comes out in my books.
Yeah.
So behind the scenes, I have like a spreadsheet that people can access, and some of them do,
Yeah.
but like every book I read, I just instantly rank it. And so it's easy for me to do these list things because I already have them listed. I just got to go figure out, what kind of list am I doing, and boom, 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 there it is. But I have to, in my brain, like I have to rank it. Otherwise, it just feels like incomplete.
Okay, you make me feel I'm actually the exact same way. Like other people, like in the comments, like, how can you rank all my like whenever people do lists, and everyone has different personalities. I do respect it, but there's always the booktubers at year end that do like, here's all the books, here's all my favorites, and they're always like, they're by the order I read them. I can't rank them, and I'm like, here is my list,
Yeah, no, this
and,
is
and arguably it's still subject to change, but I can't fathom like it's not something I do for the YouTube algorithm. I literally cannot just talk about the books without trying to put them into some sort of, I don't know, nomenclature, I guess.
yep. It
Okay.
would stress me out if I didn't rank them.
Yeah. Okay, you're making me feel better. Kindred spirits over here. For sure. Well, I guess you kind of touched on it, but I guess is there anything you do on your channel? Like, would you say your reviews are something you do on your channel that you do more as like a passion project rather than like this is going to make your channel grow? Like, I guess is that something you've kind of said? I've heard you say it. If I'm not misspeaking, that even if they're not your highest performing videos, that your reviews are kind of here to stay. And because I think that's something, it's always like a touch point as booktubers get bigger, that often you see, especially if someone wants to say do this as their day job, things like
Yep.
that, where they'll kind of be saying like, okay, I'm not doing this content anymore because it doesn't hit these certain numbers. But I've heard you say that your intention is to long term keep your reviews on, as part of your channel.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
is that
so
how you mean?
I don't, even though the channel makes money, I don't do it for that reason. I have a job that I love,
Yeah.
and I will always have a job that I love, and because I've spent my life trying to get the type of job that I'm in,
Yeah.
and so I'll never leave that, especially for something like YouTube. Like even if my channel got exploded, which I don't
Yeah.
imagine that it will, and I was making more money at that than I was at my job, which again, I have no expectation that would ever happen. I would never put all my eggs into a basket of something that could just disappear.
Yeah.
Like that. I want security. And because I don't need the money, it's just cool. It helps me go on vacations and pays for my kids' college, and that's what I do with the money.
Yeah.
That I can just do whatever I want. And what I want to do is book reviews,
Yeah.
even though they're not super popular. But if I just wanted to make money, if I wanted to make it a thing, then I would just do lists. I would go do manga. I would go stop doing reviews because they're not, especially individual reviews. I mean, you can get more views when you like I do a wrap up of the
Yeah.
month, and that's always going to perform way higher than any of my individual reviews were, because people want to see lots of things in a video.
I was gonna
Um,
say, yeah, I
and
found that. Yeah.
and,
Mhm.
and especially for like a top 10 list, and I can advertise, here's like the 8 books that I read. I've just multiplied the audience by 8. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously there was some crossover, but uh, so yeah, I will always, what I want to do. The reason I did the channel is because I want to talk about books with people, and I want feedback, and I had no avenue for that because I read a lot of older books that aren't brand new. I didn't get into reading fantasy books until a few years ago, and
Mhm.
so I'm playing catch up.
Yeah.
And so I want to have a dialogue. I want to talk about what I'm passionate about. I want to hear your thoughts. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I keep doing reviews, and being able to just constantly talk with people. So yeah, they're not going to ever get great hits, but I also think that's partially why my channel is done decently,
Yeah.
is because I'm committing to it. And I read an enormous amount of books that people are, kind of come to know that, look, I'm going to have multiple reviews out a week, and I should sub to this channel so I don't miss something that I might be interested in.
Yeah. No, for sure. I don't want to name any creators, but I've had kind of conversations in the background where I do think as other larger creators, I think, people are chatting about it in the comments, so they kind of know different ones where they've talked about kind of have moved away from major reviews and things like that. Like there are channels that I used to watch for their reviews that no longer regularly make them. And so I think as a viewer, I'm then seeking them elsewhere. And I will say that hopefully it's taken as a compliment that you have kind of filled the gap for me. There's yourself and a few other reviewers that are relatively smaller channels now, but are kind of doing what I did from, went to other channels saying, "Oh, I want to know about this popular new fantasy book. Is it worth the hype?" And I'll kind of be like, "Oh, good, Matt's read it. I'll watch that review," things like that. And so I think it's a strange thing where it's like it doesn't do well, but I feel like as other perhaps larger channels abandon certain types of videos and things like that, I do think it creates opportunity or room. And I think that's kind of what you're thinking. At least that's I've actually had that conversation, talking about other channels, including yourself, saying like, "Hey, yeah, I think he's filling a gap." Where I've seen, and it's happening in kind of science fiction too. There's a lot of push to move towards like video essays and kind of deep dives. And I'm kind of like, okay, now I need to find new channels to replace and do some that are no longer doing those like science fiction book reviews and things. And the same thing as I've seen on the fantasy side that's a bit more talked about.
Yeah, and I mean, I gotta tell you, I love it when I watch big channels start going away from reviews because it's like it's me and a lot of others are just going to cannibalize a lot of those viewers, because you just abandoned a lot of people. And I also think there's like this misconception. I've heard people talk about it on Reddit where, there's questions about like, why don't people keep doing reviews? And there's this thing like, oh, it's going to hurt me in the algorithm if I keep doing it. And that's just not the way the algorithm works. It treats every video of yours in a silo. It,
Yeah.
it doesn't care whatever you've done on your channel. It only cares about how many people are clicking, what rate they're clicking, how long are they watching. It doesn't even really care about likes so much. It just wants to know how long is it able to serve you ads. That's
Yeah.
it. And so there's definitely, I think, a big misconception about the bad videos can hurt your channel, and it's just not true.
Yeah, I might be wrong. I think the algorithm used to work a bit differently like 2, 3 years ago where I was told, and again, it could have been, more, rumors in the grapevine that specifically that, if a video performed poorly, your next video, would then be recommended less. Like they would kind of waver that up and down. Where apparently I've heard the 2003 version is each video gets its own, you know, is independent of a failure of a previous, allowing reviewers and, creators to be more. kind of more, take more chances because they're not worried about bombing something. So, and again, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but a couple years ago, I specifically, remember having internal conversations where like, oh, if you're like, it was better to, yeah, it was always like, don't you dare put out a bad video intentionally that is going to do poorly right off the bat because it will bomb the next like four. Was always the, and again, maybe it's a wives' tale. I'm
Yeah,
actually going to steal. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
it might that might have been the old way. Kind of the new way that is the worst thing you can ever do is to put out a video that is not true to your core audience. That's the death of your channel.
Yeah,
Like I play a lot of video games. I think it'd be really fun to do some live streaming of video games, but I don't want those video game people coming to sub to my channel because they're not book people, and then my book stuff will just suffer majorly from click through rate. And so, you kind of got to pick a genre and then just kind of write it hard
yeah.
because then you'll be dead.
Yeah, I'm actually going to steal a comment from the chat here that it says, when you're doing wrap up videos, do you let the audience know ahead of time all the books, or kind of make it more of a secret? So I think this is leaning into the idea of how much do you give away in either just description or specifically doing like chapters where people can click ahead. And I'll be honest, I go back and forth. So are you comfortable to kind of share how you feel about that? Because it's tough that there is a dependency on keeping a decent amount of watch time, and I'm torn because I go back and forth. I do some with books and some without, where I kind of share more of what's coming or not.
I found the thing that's most beneficial for my channel to not say what is going to be in it. And if I do in the background, I'll like heavily blur the book covers. So they're essentially just mush. And if you're really into them, you know what it is, but very few people do. But then putting chapters in. So it brings them in by not knowing what it is, but then it keeps them there by saying like, look, I don't have to watch everything, because if they have to watch everything, there's a chance they're just going to click off. And I'd rather people go watch 5 of the 10 things on my video than I would be watching one and saying, all right, I'm bored. I don't want to keep going here.
Ah, now you're convincing me. I always hold off. I rarely do I rarely do content. Mostly just because I find that one extra step of editing of having to go back to the video and find the timestamps.
Yeah.
So I don't do that often with my rep videos. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should. I don't want to be turning anyone off.
So
So
so I do a
there we go.
trick for
Yeah.
me internally in that whenever I'm talking about a book, I put up the cover for the entire time that I'm talking about that book. So when I go through and have to put the chapters in, it's super easy to see when it ends or doesn't end because I just have a visual cue.
Yeah. No, that makes sense for sure. And I think, yeah, it's always that line of like, because yeah, remember like back when, holding up books, like it was always the key that you like hold up the books backwards. And like, it's always weird because you don't want people to see the spines. So that was always the thing. And now, yeah, I think I'm kind of experimenting with, because I'm messing around with my um, own like backgrounds in terms of like some of my thumbnails. And I've kind of seen it where if I put the thumbnails, like if I put some of the cover art behind me and it is ridiculously popular, like everyone wants to know the opinion on combat codes right now. So I
Yep.
put that in there, and I do think it did like okay because it kind of brought people in. But exactly, if they're books that people haven't heard of, then you kind of want to like tease them a little bit. So it's a tough line there for sure.
I'd probably physically put the book in the background if I could, but I just stopped reading physical books a while back. I just do Kindles now, so I have to like edit in the cover.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I do that. I was gonna say I do a bit of everything, so I hear you there. Speaking of thumbnails, I guess do you have kind of you sort of have like I guess a style you've gone with? Like I guess how do you personally kind of deal with that balance between again an appealing thumbnail but not feeling like it's clickbaity? Do you have any kind of personal rules for that?
So I have a style I do on my book reviews where I just put the cover in a corner. I do some editing to the background a little bit on the rest of it, and then my face in a title. But I don't really care so much about the book reviews because they're not clicking on it because of the thumbnail. I do put a lot of effort into my ones that I know are going to perform well, and
Hmm.
I'll make like 3 different thumbnails for a big video that I do, and I'll kind of like test it out in my Discord channel, and I'll put it in for like 30 minutes, and then I'll swap it out, and I'll look at the analytics and say which one is performing better.
Yeah.
And I'll do it for a few of them, and then I'll just stick to the one that was performing the best. It's a lot more effort, but I was watching a video where that's like what the really, really big YouTubers do. And I'm so kind of OCD about tracking data that, I kind of know what covers are impacting the big videos. So it's a lot of effort, but ultimately I go for that.
Yeah, no, that's good to know, 'cause I think my husband actually made me watch it might be the same one where he was like, "You have to do this," and so I don't do it often where I switch out. It usually has to be like a video that's bombing where it takes effort because I don't often mock up more than one, but I know that that's really good for it. So it sounds like, are you pretty deep able to do some deep dives into like the YouTube analytic apps, so you're actually looking at like, okay, what was my performance in this like half hour? Because
Yep.
I'm bad, like I just look at the front page and it's like it'll just do the like this video is doing terrible, and you're like, oh, okay, and I'll like put it down. But
Yeah,
um,
I kind of have a
yeah.
spreadsheet that putting data into to tell me like
Mhm.
what track it's going on. And then if it's not doing what I thought it should, then yeah, we're
Yep.
swapping out. We're swapping out real
Yep.
quick to get something else in there. But yeah, it's a it took time to kind of understand it. But I'll also do some stuff when I'm bored. I'll just go redo a thumbnail for an old video and pop it in, and it'll sometimes like totally get a new video to pop into the algorithm that never was before.
That's interesting. I've kind of played around with a little bit. I had a few videos that were sort of trending already, but I kind of hated the old thumbnail and like just the like old. I was like, why did I do this? And so yeah, there's some that kind of get like a second life. So it's interesting to see, what makes something appealing and all that. And I think
It,
yeah,
it,
you
it
kind of keep it simple. Yeah.
it's helpful too to me that I have a pretty large Discord. It's like almost 2,000 people. And so when I'm doing a really big video, I'll just go put up a few different thumbnails and say, "What do you guys think is the best one?"
Yeah.
And I already know, like, look, I've already group sourced this. This is the best title. I have, hundreds of people chiming in that are already telling me what the general public thinks.
Yeah. No, for sure. And that's yeah, it's why it's great to kind of get some different opinions on that. So you may not have an answer for this because you sound like you really try to just, do your booktube channel the way you want to. But is there anything I guess you've done in the past that you no longer do, or something you kind of wish, I guess you kind of touched on it, like something you wish you could do with your channel that you don't do because you think it wouldn't really serve your channel well? Like you mentioned kind of wanting to do like potentially like Twitch streaming and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really that. It's the video game thing. It's one of my passions. When I'm done reading books at night, I'm going to play video games. And I know that I know there's an avenue out there for it. I don't
Yeah.
have the energy to go make a second channel,
Yeah, I feel like you'd
and
have to. Yeah,
I
because 'cause you'd
just
have my
don't.
husband watching you if you were doing that. Because like, basically, I'm sitting here watching Booktube videos, and he's next to me in the bed watching, like, someone play Dead by Daylight or some other video game, and, we're both looking at each other's video, and we're like, "Who watches that?" It's like, we're just clearly yeah, so if he watches accidentally on my account, I'm like, "Where are all these streams coming from?" And vice versa, and he's like, "Why are there books on my YouTube account?"
Yeah, I mean,
It
when I go
yeah,
back and watch my old videos, I cringe a lot. But I don't know that I would change anything because it made me grow as a creator. It taught me
yeah,
the things that I shouldn't do, and I would have never been able to learn those things had I not failed for a
yeah,
long time. And otherwise, I would just be doing the same old stuff.
yeah,
And
and
so I found it was
mhm,
really helpful just to put out content, do what I can, watch it, critique yourself, watch other stuff, say what are they doing that I'm not, and how can I
yeah.
improve on the garbage that I'm putting out, and trying to make it look better and sound better and like be more palatable to the viewer.
So do you actually go back sometimes and watch, like, once it's posted to YouTube, will you watch something you've done? Because 'Cause I'll admit, once it's done editing, it goes up, and I never look at my face again if I can avoid it.
It
But
depends. Like
mhm,
if the comments are talking about something either in a good way or a bad way,
right.
I'll go back and say like, what are they talking about?
Oh, I've
I
had that
didn't
where they,
feel like
like,
I said something
will they, like,
controversial.
timestamp you and be like, "What is this?" I've had
Yeah,
that
and
where
so
yeah,
I'll go back and kind of
yeah,
watch. When I'm really proud of a video,
mhm.
I'll go watch it again
Oh, yeah,
when it's out, and or when I'm really embarrassed about something, I'll go watch it and kind of go through. And I do watch some of my old videos just to kind of laugh. People will mention like, "Oh, have you reviewed this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually did, but you don't want to watch it." And
right, yeah,
I'll go back and watch it and just be like, "Man, that was a different me."
right, and I think I've seen it where you like, with Loch Lamora that I don't know if you had it was a reread for you, I don't know if you had
Yeah.
previously reviewed on your channel, but kinda eventually get some, second life on there.
Yep.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Going into that, do you have some kind of longer term like goals for your channel or kind of future projects that you want to tease at all? Kind of what's coming up? Are you someone who has like strict like I want to hit this many subscribers by that time or kind of more
No,
soft
I mean,
goals?
I think in general, I always want to have one video performing well. And you've seen it probably when you get a video that's performing well, it'll last for anywhere from days to weeks.
Yeah.
So I always want one video doing well. And then when it starts to not perform well, then I'll be like, all right, what's next? or
Mhm.
I kind of have a spreadsheet, and these are the 10 videos I know are going to do well, and I'll prep them ahead of time so that when I start to wane off one, that I'll start ramping up and getting ready for a big one.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of big stuff I have coming up, I don't know how well it's going to perform, but I have a really long, cool interview with the author of The Wandering Inn, who doesn't
Oh,
really do interviews.
I was gonna say, are they gonna show their face? 'Cause
No. So um, I've been spending a lot of time typing back and forth to them
Mhm.
over the past couple weeks, and extremely long conversation.
Yeah.
And now it's at the audiobook narrator, and the
Mhm.
narrator is going to narrate the author's words.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, amazing.
so then I'm going to edit my version in, and then kind of have a back and forth with that narrator, and just kind of have it live from there. But I'm really excited about it because the author's been very hidden and doesn't
Great.
really
That's
talk
what I
about
thought.
things.
So I was like, if you get to do yeah, I mean, even doing this is a huge, I think,
Yeah, so and they've done a couple interviews, but really short and not deep dive into anything.
okay.
Just very basic stuff. So
'Cause
I'm personally really excited about it. I don't know how well it's going to perform.
well, I will watch it 3 times, and between yourself and my wife, or your wife, we'll give you some views.
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
excited about it because the
No.
answers are very like illuminating and like show a totally different light on this author that I've always been desperate to get the answers out of.
Yeah, and that's why, like, just knowing it's an author that doesn't put out their, actual personal information as their author name, and again, like, I don't know, I mean, and maybe you know it, like, if you kind of looked up more that, yeah, they don't, like, easily identify their gender or things like that, like, it's not easily so I know I'm a big sucker for a mystery, so I
Well,
definitely wanna see
and they're
anything that's
not
put out.
like I don't know that they're trying to hide. It's just that the series is really big in a core audience, but there no
Mhm,
reviewers are really into it. I did it, and there was a couple really small reviewers that did it before me.
mhm.
But now that I do it, think some other people are starting to review it and be well. But the author reached out and like sent me a bunch of merch and like huge thank you letter about how helpful I've been to their stuff, and I'm like, hey, let's talk then.
Cool, yeah.
It just kind of worked out.
Nice, and I that's the thing is I think, like, really what I said, with your channel is that there's a lot of passion, I think, behind your videos, and like I said, it just comes across on camera again, where I feel like, you're just kinda talking off the cuff, but you're not just like, "Yeah, the book was kinda good," like, again, and that's arguably and I mean, that's always gonna be the case that either your gush or your rant reviews are going to probably perform the best because I love hearing you really excited about a book, or if you have really strong opinions the other way is interesting too, because of that. Because 'cause I'll admit, yeah, like, if you just like, otherwise it's like, "Oh, what's this book about?" But it's like, "Okay, I wanna know this book that, you just can't stop talking about," and, doing multiple reviews talking about the series is really what pulled me in. Because like I said, it wasn't even your first book. Yeah, I listened to, yeah, book 4, and I was like, "Okay, you keep putting up these reviews. I don't know what the series is. Okay, there's, like, this gushing pic you look super excited on the screen. I might as well find out what all the hype is about."
Yeah, beyond that, I'd love to get more into author interviews.
Mhm.
I have authors reaching out wanting to talk, and I'm just nervous about it because I haven't honed that craft at all. The Wandering In one worked really well because I could sit back and type it out, and think about it for a while before I asked it because there was no like timeline. But I would be very stressed out about like interviewing one of my favorite authors because
Yeah.
I don't think I'm a good interviewer. I don't have any experience in it. But I need to just kind of just do it, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to get better if I just sit back and don't do it. So at some point I'll kind of uncap that cork and start reaching out to authors and talking because they want to talk to booktubers. That's
Yeah.
free money for them, and bigger audience. But yeah, I'm just kind of nervous to get into it because I don't want to kind of make a fool of myself.
Oh, I'm the same way. I've other than like I've done a couple like indie horror authors that done a bit of content for way back, but just recently there's a publicist who put out an email, and I love this fantasy series, and they were like, oh, if anyone wants if let me know if you got the book that I sent you, and then let me know if you want to do an interview with the author. And I took a chance, and I was like, my book hasn't arrived yet. Can you check the mailing thing? Oh, and I'd love to do love to do an interview with the author. And the publicist emailed me back, said, "We'll track down your book." I was like, and nothing about the interview. So I was like, "Oh, I think I got denied there." So I was like, "Okay." I was like, be cool with it." So I think it's funny that even as like my channel grows, I'm always thankful and fortunate for the opportunities I get, whether it be from publishers or authors reaching out, because there are always times that you're kind of kind of get like your like I don't know, I guess like get kind of checked and be like, you stay in your place there over there. Don't get too excited. So I was like, May I'd love to do it. And it's just like absolutely dead silence. And they emailed me back and confirmed that the book was in the mail, and that was it. So I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
author's like, I write
okay.
the books, you read the books. Let's leave it
Yeah,
at
but
that.
but specifically in the email, they said this author is seeking interviews. So so it's not even that they don't do interviews, they didn't want to do an interview with me. So I was like,
God.
"Oh, how embarrassing." Anyway, I shouldn't, air my dirty laundry over here.
That's awesome.
So I want to say a huge thank you to you for coming on. You were my first guest on this series, and as soon as I thought doing this content, I wanted to have you as my. I was like I messaged you, and then I did that thing where like I'm refreshing Discord or DMs. Or like he hasn't responded yet. His symbol said he's online, and so I was having it's the publish this interview trauma all over
Well,
again. So I
so I had so when you sent the message, I could see on my phone what it was about, but I didn't have time to respond, and so I didn't want to click on it
oh
until
yeah,
I had time to respond because then I'd forget. Um,
I've done that.
I
Yeah.
wanted the notification there.
Sure, sure, sure. You're like, "Oh, there she is again. Oh, I don't know how to get rid of her. I'll just see. I'll do it. Fine. Can't get rid of her." So I very much appreciate it. I just think that you're very open with what you've done, which I appreciate. Again, I'll try to, after I do this, my plan is to post this probably either as like a published video or as just a live stream after we're done. So anyone who couldn't watch it, I apologize to the UK and Australian audience. I know this is not the best time of day to post, but they can rewatch this. And hopefully, again, just for other creators, because as a creator, I've kind of mentioned this at the beginning of the live stream. There's certain booktuber friends that like I'll share my thumbnail and say, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of this title? Or what of this idea? And then there's those that I just don't have a personal connection to. And so maybe I'll do that to you in the future, Matt, if you don't mind. But
Yeah, please do.
having having it where you're always like, well, why did Matt do that on that one video? And then again, like hopefully it kind of helps to give people insight and kind of opinions on some of these booktube topics and positioning of your channel without, for those of us that, like I said, don't have, kind of the excuse or privilege to kind of DM certain creators. So that's kind of the intention here. For anyone watching this, I'd love to know in kind of the comments and like messages afterwards if there's any other creators you'd like me to tap on the shoulder. I cannot guarantee that they'll say yes because because I apparently have no charisma online, but I really appreciate Matt you coming out. And again, I'm going to have your channel linked, and I will yell about your channel as much as I can in my upcoming videos to bring people your way. I feel like of my active subscribers, I suspect we have a lot of crossover already because
Yeah.
as an older channel, I kind of feel like I have again some subscribers that aren't probably watching BookTube anymore, that make my number look better than it is. Let's say. But I think, like I said, you've done a great job, like I said, without feeling, and that's where I kind of tease. I might, right now I'm calling this like the BookTube algorithm game. Like it's not to be crass about it, but it's that idea that everyone would kind of like to grow and be seen
Mhm.
and make connections again. Like, I had a smaller creator, who it's always I don't know if you ever have it where if you comment on a smaller creator's video and they're like, oh my gosh, it's for them they're like it's
Yeah.
Rachel for the Shades of Orange cup, and I'm like I'm a nobody. I've been but it's kind of those stepping stones, and so I try to really be like, oh, you can DM me too. Like again, I want to be open book, and I love that you have an open Discord, which makes yourself a little bit more reachable.
Awesome. Yeah, and thank you so much, Rachel. I super appreciate it. I don't get a lot of people reaching out to me to do talks, so it's always super appreciated. And being able to do this on a not spending like 4 hours doing an interview is fantastic.
Beautiful.
Because I'm gonna have to start making dinner soon for the kids and doing family stuff. So
I'm
super
in this.
helpful.
I'm in the same boat, absolutely. For anyone who ever said no to a live stream, it's the length commitment that tends to be the kicker for me. Is that, yeah, it's hard with family life. It's like I'm kind of just like go, through. It's a tough balance for sure. I'll leave it there.
Yep.
Anyway, I think
Well,
we'll pause it. Oh, go ahead. Any
no,
last
no,
words?
I just super appreciate it, and your channel rocks, and love watching your content.
Oh, I appreciate you hanging around for that. All right, so thanks everyone. We'll end the live chat here, and we'll talk again soon. Again, let me know afterwards what creators you'd like me to tap on the shoulder, and we'll see what happens. Okay, bye.